The moment Ethan signed the divorce papers, he didn't even look up. A smug smile spread across his face as he slid the documents across the table, convinced he had finally rid himself of the woman he believed had become nothing but a burden. Beside him, his glamorous mistress, Vanessa, wrapped an arm around his shoulder and laughed without shame. Together, they mocked Olivia's silence, calling her a failure who had nothing left to offer. Before Olivia could gather the few belongings she had brought, Ethan and Vanessa forced her out of the house, throwing her suitcase onto the sidewalk as the front door slammed behind her. Standing alone with tears in her eyes, she had no idea that her phone contained the one message that was about to change her life forever. Just minutes earlier, lawyers handling her late grandfather's estate had confirmed that she was now the sole heir to a billion-dollar fortune. Hidden for years to protect her from greedy people, the inheritance included luxury properties, investment firms, and enough wealth to rewrite her future overnight. But Ethan knew nothing about it. Certain he had traded up, he eagerly began planning a lavish wedding with the woman he believed would elevate his status. Weeks later, drunk on pride, Ethan sent Olivia an invitation, not out of kindness, but to humiliate her one final time. He wanted her to watch him marry the woman he claimed was his true soulmate. He expected tears, regret, and envy. Instead, on the morning of the wedding, a gleaming Rolls-Royce pulled up to the venue. Olivia stepped out with quiet confidence, dressed with effortless elegance, surrounded by powerful executives and security. The laughter stopped. The smiles disappeared. And before the ceremony could begin, one revelation shattered everything Ethan and Vanessa believed they had won. The silence outside Ethan's luxury townhouse was broken only by the sound of Olivia's suitcase tipping over on the pavement. One of its wheels had snapped off when Vanessa threw it down the front steps, spilling a few neatly folded clothes onto the concrete. Olivia knelt to gather them without saying a word. Every movement was slow, controlled, as though refusing to give the two people standing at the doorway the satisfaction of seeing her break. Vanessa folded her arms with a triumphant smile. "Hurry up," she sneered. "The neighbors don't need to think we're running a homeless shelter." Ethan chuckled. "Leave her alone. She'll figure something out. She's always been good at surviving with nothing." Those words cut deeper than either of them realized. For 5 years, Olivia had stood beside Ethan while he struggled to build his architectural consulting firm. She had worked late nights managing invoices, negotiating with difficult suppliers, and quietly paying bills from her modest savings whenever cash flow became tight. She had skipped vacations, sold jewelry inherited from her grandmother, and postponed her own dreams so Ethan could chase his. Now he looked at her as though she had contributed nothing. Olivia picked up the last blouse from the ground and placed it back into the damaged suitcase. "I hope she cries all night," Vanessa whispered loudly enough for Olivia to hear. "Oh, she will," Ethan replied. "Reality is finally catching up with her." Without another glance, they shut the door. The loud click of the lock echoed through Olivia's chest. She stood motionless for several seconds before taking a slow breath. Her heart felt shattered, yet beneath the pain was an unfamiliar calm. She had spent months sensing her marriage slipping away. Ethan had become increasingly secretive, working late, guarding his phone, inventing business trips that never seemed to lead to new contracts. Deep inside, she had known another woman existed long before she discovered Vanessa's messages. Even then, she had hoped honesty could save what they had built together. She had been wrong. As she reached for the handle of her suitcase, her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Normally, she would have ignored it. Instead, she answered. "Miss Olivia Carter," an elderly gentleman asked politely. "Yes. My name is Richard Holloway. I'm the senior partner at Holloway, Pierce and Associates. First, please accept my deepest condolences on the passing of your grandfather, Jonathan Sterling." Olivia frowned. "My grandfather." She barely remembered the man. Her mother had severed contact with that side of the family decades earlier, insisting there were painful reasons that would be explained one day. After both her parents died in an accident, Olivia had grown up believing she had no surviving relatives. "There must be some mistake," she replied quietly. "There is no mistake," Richard answered gently. Mr. Sterling spent years searching for you. Before his passing, he left explicit legal instructions that every asset under the Sterling family trust should transfer directly to you upon verification of your identity. Olivia tightened her grip on the phone. I don't understand. I wouldn't expect you to. This conversation is only the beginning. Our legal team has already completed probate. The transfer is effective immediately. She looked back at the house, where Ethan and Vanessa were undoubtedly celebrating. I'm afraid this isn't a good time. I understand, Richard said kindly, but I believe you'll want to hear the remainder. Olivia leaned against the broken suitcase. The estimated value of your inheritance currently exceeds $1.3 billion. The world around her seemed to stop. Cars continued passing. Birds chirped from nearby trees. Yet everything sounded distant. Richard continued explaining that the estate included international investment portfolios, commercial real estate, private equity holdings, and majority ownership in several companies that had been quietly managed through a family office for decades. Olivia barely heard the details. Only one sentence echoed in her mind. You are now the sole heir. At the very window where Ethan and Vanessa had laughed moments before, the curtains shifted slightly. Someone was watching her. Olivia slowly wiped away the last tear from her cheek. For the first time that day, she lifted her head, not in defiance, not in revenge, but because somewhere inside her, the first fragile spark of a new beginning had just been lit. Olivia barely slept that night. The modest hotel room Richard Holloway had arranged for her overlooked a quiet river on the edge of the city. It wasn't the luxury suite she could now afford, but after everything that had happened, she welcomed the simplicity. Her mind replayed the day's events over and over, the divorce papers, Vanessa's laughter, Ethan's cold eyes, and the unbelievable phone call that had turned her world upside down. At precisely 9 o'clock the following morning, a black luxury sedan pulled up outside the hotel. Richard Holloway stepped out first, followed by two impeccably dressed assistants carrying leather portfolios. He greeted Olivia with a warm smile. Good morning, Miss Carter. She smiled politely. Please call me Olivia. Only if you promise to call me Richard. For the first time in days, she laughed softly. As they drove towards Sterling family headquarters, Richard carefully explained the history her mother had never spoken about. Nearly 40 years earlier, Jonathan Sterling had built an investment empire from almost nothing. His companies quietly expanded into commercial real estate, renewable energy, technology investments, luxury hotels, and financial services. Yet despite the family's immense wealth, Jonathan believed public attention attracted dangerous people. He kept the family's identity hidden behind trusts, holding companies, and professional executives. When your mother married your father, Richard explained, she chose a life away from wealth. Your grandfather respected her decision, although it broke his heart. So why didn't he contact me after my parents died? He tried. Richard's expression became solemn. Every letter was returned. Every investigator lost the trail. By the time he finally found you, he had become seriously ill. Olivia looked out the window. So he knew about me. He knew everything he could. Her eyes filled with tears. I spent my entire life believing no one wanted me. Richard gently handed her a folded letter. He wrote this 6 months before he passed away. He instructed us to give it to you only after the estate transfer was complete. With trembling hands, Olivia unfolded the letter. Her dearest Olivia, if you are reading this, then I no longer have the chance to tell you these words myself. I never abandoned you. Every birthday, every Christmas, every important moment of your life, I wondered where you were and prayed you were safe. The greatest regret of my life is that circumstances kept us apart. I cannot give you the years we lost. but I can leave you the future I spent my lifetime building. Do not let wealth change your heart. Let it give you the freedom to become the woman you are always meant to be. Choose kindness before revenge. Choose wisdom before anger. And never measure your worth by the people who failed to recognize it. I have always loved you. Grandfather. By the time she reached the final line, tears blurred the page. Richard quietly waited. I'm sorry, Olivia whispered. There is nothing to apologize for. I wish I'd known him. So did he. The car stopped before a striking glass tower that rose above the city's skyline. A polished silver plaque near the entrance read, Sterling Global Holdings. Executives lined the entrance. Men and women in tailored suits stood respectfully as Olivia stepped from the vehicle. No cameras. No dramatic applause. Only quiet dignity. A distinguished woman approached first. I'm Amelia Brooks, Chief Executive Officer. We've all been looking forward to meeting you. One after another, department heads introduced themselves. No one treated her like an outsider. No one questioned her place. Richard leaned closer. Your grandfather made sure every executive understood one thing. What was that? When you arrived, this company would already belong to you. Inside the executive boardroom, financial reports covered an enormous walnut table. Richard opened the first folder. This contains a summary of your assets. Olivia glanced at the first page. She almost laughed from disbelief. Luxury hotels, office towers, private aviation interests, technology funds, agricultural investments, renewable energy projects, charitable foundations, international properties. Every page revealed another piece of a life she had never imagined. I don't know how to manage any of this, she admitted honestly. Amelia smiled reassuringly. You don't have to know everything today. Richard nodded. The greatest leaders are not the ones who know every answer. They're the ones willing to learn. That sentence settled something inside her. For years, Ethan had made every major decision without consulting her. Whenever she suggested an idea, he dismissed it before she finished speaking. You don't understand business. You wouldn't get it. Leave the important decisions to me. Now, standing in a boardroom worth more than Ethan could imagine, she realized how deeply those words had shaped her confidence. No more. She looked around the room. I don't want people working for me because of my last name. They won't, Amelia replied. They'll work with you because of the leader you become. Over the next several weeks, Olivia immersed herself in learning. She attended strategy meetings, studied financial statements, visited construction sites, met employees from every level of the organization. She insisted on remembering names. She ate lunch with junior staff instead of dining exclusively with executives. Whenever someone presented an idea, she listened before speaking. Slowly, the uncertainty faded. Her confidence no longer came from the money she possessed. It came from the woman she was becoming. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan's life appeared perfect. He and Vanessa toured luxury wedding venues almost every weekend. They posted smiling photographs online with captions celebrating their fresh start. Friends congratulated them. His mother proudly declared Vanessa was finally the sophisticated woman our family deserved. Whenever Olivia's name surfaced in conversation, they laughed. I wonder where she's living now, Vanessa joked one evening while browsing designer wedding gowns. Ethan shrugged without looking up from his tablet. Probably with some roommate. Neither of them knew that, at that very moment, Olivia was seated in a boardroom reviewing acquisition proposals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Neither of them knew that her signature could influence industries. Neither of them imagined that fate was quietly arranging another meeting, one that neither wealth nor arrogance would allow Ethan to escape. 3 months passed, and with each new sunrise, Olivia became less like the woman Ethan had thrown onto the sidewalk and more like the leader her grandfather had believed she could become. The transformation had nothing to do with expensive clothes or luxury cars. Those came naturally with her position. The real change happened within. Every morning, she arrived at Sterling Global Holdings before most executives. She spent hours learning how each division operated, asking questions instead of pretending to know the answers. She visited construction projects, manufacturing facilities, and regional offices, speaking with employees whose names most executives never bothered to learn. She quickly discovered something her grandfather had quietly built into the company's culture. Respect was never measured by wealth. It was earned through integrity. One afternoon, Amelia placed a thick file on Olivia's desk. "I think you're ready." Olivia looked up. "Ready for what?" "Your grandfather personally reviewed every acquisition before approving it. Beginning today, that responsibility belongs to you." Olivia opened the folder. The proposal involved purchasing a struggling architectural consulting firm whose financial position had weakened significantly over the past year. As she scanned the executive summary, one sentence caught her attention. Harrison Architectural Consulting. Her heartbeat slowed. That was Ethan's company. She continued reading. The report detailed declining profits, rising debt, delayed client payments, and several failed expansion projects. Richard, who had joined the meeting, noticed the change in her expression. "You recognize the company?" Olivia nodded slowly. "My ex-husband owns it." Silence settled over the room. Amelia carefully closed the file. "If you'd rather someone else review this acquisition, no one will question your decision." Olivia remained thoughtful for several moments. "No." Both executives looked at her. "I won't avoid it simply because it's personal." Richard studied her carefully. "And if we proceed, we'll evaluate it exactly as we would any other company." He smiled. "That's precisely the answer your grandfather would have hoped for." Over the next week, Olivia reviewed every financial statement herself. She refused to let emotion cloud her judgment. What she discovered surprised even the senior analysts. Ethan's company wasn't failing because of the market. It was failing because of poor leadership. He had taken unnecessary risks to impress investors. He ignored experienced managers who questioned his decisions. He spent heavily on appearances, luxury offices, extravagant client dinners, expensive vehicles, while neglecting the company's operational problems. More troubling still, Vanessa had convinced him to replace several competent employees with her friends, none of whom possessed the qualifications required for their positions. The company's decline had accelerated ever since. Olivia quietly closed the report. She felt no satisfaction, only sadness. This wasn't the ambitious man she had once believed in. This was someone blinded by pride. Meanwhile, Ethan was obsessed with making his wedding the social event of the year. Crystal chandeliers were imported from Europe. A celebrity chef was hired. A famous designer created Vanessa's custom gown. Every detail had to announce success. At dinner one evening, Ethan's mother raised a glass. "To new beginnings." Everyone smiled. Then she laughed. "You know what would make the wedding even better?" Vanessa leaned forward. "What?" If Olivia were there. The table erupted with laughter. I'd love to see the expression on her face, one relative added. Imagine watching your replacement marry your ex-husband. Vanessa clapped excitedly. Oh, we have to invite her. Ethan hesitated. What if she refuses? His mother waved dismissively. She won't. How do you know? Because she'll want closure. Vanessa smirked. And if she comes looking miserable, everyone will see I was always the better choice. The idea quickly became everyone's favorite topic of conversation. By the end of the evening, Ethan had convinced himself it wasn't cruel. It was symbolic. He wanted Olivia to witness what he called his better future. The following afternoon, a cream-colored envelope arrived at Sterling Global Holdings. Olivia's assistant entered her office. This was delivered by courier. Olivia opened it. Elegant gold lettering filled the card. Mr. Ethan Harrison and Miss Vanessa Cole request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration. She stared silently. Folded inside was a handwritten note. I hope you've managed to get your life together. I thought it would mean a lot for you to see me finally marrying the woman I truly love. Please don't disappoint us. We'd love for you to celebrate our happiness. Ethan. Richard happened to enter as she lowered the invitation. You look troubled. She handed him the card. His expression darkened. That's remarkably insensitive. Olivia gave a faint smile. It is. You don't have to respond. She walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. For several moments, she said nothing. Finally, she asked quietly, Richard, if I don't go, will I always wonder whether fear made the decision for me? He considered the question carefully. I think only you can answer that. She nodded slowly. When Ethan threw me out, I thought my life was over. She looked down at the bustling streets below. Now my life is just beginning. Richard remained silent. I don't want revenge. No. No. She turned toward him. But I also refuse to hide from people who tried to make me believe I was worthless. A gentle smile spread across Richard's face. Then perhaps your presence will say everything that words cannot. Over the next several days, preparations quietly began. Not for revenge. For dignity. Amelia arranged security because several high-profile business leaders would already be attending another event nearby. Olivia's stylist selected a timeless gown, not flashy, not extravagant, simply elegant. Her chauffeur confirmed transportation. When Amelia suggested one of the company's executive vehicles, Richard smiled knowingly. I believe Mr. Sterling left very specific instructions regarding formal occasions. He opened another file. Inside was a photograph. A handcrafted midnight silver Rolls-Royce. Built years earlier. Maintained exclusively for the Sterling family. It belonged to your grandfather. Olivia gently touched the photograph. I think. She paused. He would have wanted you to arrive in it. For the first time since receiving the invitation, Olivia felt completely at peace. She wasn't going to Ethan's wedding to prove she had become wealthy. She was going because she had finally remembered her worth. And on the other side of the city, Ethan stood before hundreds of guests during his rehearsal dinner, laughing confidently as he lifted a glass. Tomorrow, he declared proudly, marks the best decision I've ever made. Not a single person in the room realized that by the same time the following day, everything they believed about success, power, and Olivia Carter would be turned upside down. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Sunlight spilled across the city as florists hurried to make their final arrangements, and catering staff rushed between the reception hall and the outdoor garden where the ceremony would take place. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway of the Grand Regency Hotel, each one carrying guests dressed in designer suits and elegant gowns. A string quartet rehearsed softly beneath a canopy of white roses, while photographers positioned themselves to capture every carefully planned moment. Inside the bridal suite, Vanessa admired herself in a floor-length mirror. "This is exactly how I imagined it," she said with a satisfied smile. Her makeup artist adjusted the veil. "You look beautiful." "I know." Vanessa turned toward Ethan's mother, Margaret, who was supervising the room like a general preparing for battle. "Did she respond?" Margaret smiled knowingly. "No." Vanessa frowned. "You don't think she's too embarrassed to come?" Margaret laughed. "Trust me, curiosity always wins." Vanessa nodded. "I hope she comes. I want her to see what she lost." Across the hotel, Ethan stood with his groomsmen in a private lounge overlooking the gardens. One of his friends adjusted his tie. "Nervous?" Ethan shook his head. "Not at all. You've been checking the guest list every 5 minutes." Ethan smirked. "I'm just wondering whether Olivia will actually show up." Another friend laughed. "If she has any pride left, she won't." "I think she will." "Why?" "Because people like Olivia always hold onto the past." His friends nodded, convinced he was right. None of them noticed the irony. The man who claimed he had moved on was the one still wondering whether his former wife would witness his triumph. Outside, guests continued arriving. Business owners, local politicians, socialites, influencers, several executives from companies Ethan hoped to impress. He greeted each one enthusiastically, believing the wedding would strengthen both his reputation and his business. What he didn't know was that his company's financial situation had deteriorated even further during the previous month. 2 important contracts had been suspended. A major lender was reviewing its exposure. Suppliers were beginning to demand faster payment. But today, none of that mattered to him. Appearances mattered more. Nearly an hour before the ceremony, another vehicle entered the hotel's long driveway. It wasn't loud. It wasn't escorted by flashing lights. It simply moved with quiet elegance. Conversations near the entrance gradually faded. Guests turned instinctively. The polished midnight silver Rolls-Royce glided toward the front entrance like a work of art. Even the valet paused. "I've never seen one like that. It must belong to royalty." The chauffeur stepped out first. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black uniform, he walked to the rear passenger door. Standing nearby, photographers instinctively raised their cameras. No one knew who had arrived. The door opened. Olivia stepped onto the red-carpeted entrance with effortless grace. She wore an ivory-colored couture gown that reflected timeless elegance rather than extravagance. A single diamond pendant rested against her neckline, while understated earrings caught the morning sunlight. Nothing about her appearance shouted wealth. Everything about her presence commanded respect. The hotel entrance became strangely quiet. Guests whispered among themselves. "Who is she? She looks familiar. Is she a diplomat?" "No." Someone suddenly recognized her. "Isn't that Ethan's ex-wife?" Another guest blinked in disbelief. "No, that can't be. Look closer." Within seconds, murmurs spread through the crowd. "It is. She looks completely different. I barely recognized her." Olivia offered the chauffeur a grateful smile before turning toward the entrance. Behind her, another luxury sedan stopped. Then another. Then a fourth. From them stepped several distinguished men and women. Amelia Brooks, Richard Holloway, senior executives from Sterling Global Holdings. Each greeted Olivia respectfully. "Good morning, Ms. Carter. It's wonderful to see you. We're honored to accompany you." The surrounding guests exchanged confused glances. Why are those executives with her? "I know that woman," one businessman whispered. "That's Amelia Brooks, the CAO. Yes. What is she doing here?" "I have no idea." None of them yet understood the connection. Inside the bridal suite, one of Vanessa's cousins burst through the door. "You need to come outside." Vanessa frowned. "What happened?" I think Olivia is here." Vanessa smiled triumphantly. "Finally." She walked confidently toward the window, expecting to see a lonely woman arriving in a taxi. Instead, she froze. The Rolls-Royce gleamed beneath the sunlight. Well-dressed executives surrounded Olivia with obvious respect. Guests were already making space as she walked toward the entrance. Vanessa's smile disappeared. "What?" She blinked repeatedly. "Whose car is that?" Margaret stepped beside her. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Margaret forced a laugh. "It must be rented." Vanessa nodded quickly. "Of course. It has to be." She's trying to save face. Yet neither sounded convinced. Meanwhile, Ethan stood near the ceremony arch greeting another guest when one of his groomsmen hurried over. "Ethan." "What?" "You should probably come inside." "Why?" "It's Olivia." A confident smile spread across Ethan's face. "So she came." "Yes. I knew she would." He straightened his jacket. "This should be interesting." Still smiling, he walked toward the entrance. The moment he stepped through the hotel doors, his smile vanished. Olivia stood only a few yards away, speaking calmly with Richard and Amelia. The Rolls-Royce remained parked behind them. Executives Ethan recognized from newspaper interviews treated Olivia as though she were the most important person present. For several seconds, he couldn't move. His mind struggled to reconcile the woman before him with the one he had thrown onto the sidewalk only months earlier. She wasn't angry. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply looked untouchable. Olivia noticed him. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, the noise of the wedding faded. Ethan expected bitterness. Perhaps tears. Maybe resentment. Instead, she smiled politely. The kind of calm smile one offers a distant acquaintance. Nothing more. Nothing less. It unsettled him far more than anger ever could. He forced himself to walk forward. "Olivia." His voice sounded less confident than he intended. "I'm surprised you actually came." She returned the invitation card to her handbag before answering. "You invited me." "Yes." He glanced toward the Rolls-Royce. "Nice entrance." "Thank you. You rented quite an impressive car." Before Olivia could respond, Richard stepped forward. "I'm afraid you're mistaken." Ethan looked at him. "The vehicle belongs to Miss Carter." Silence. Ethan laughed awkwardly. "That's a good joke." Richard's expression never changed. "I wasn't joking." For the first time that day, a tiny crack appeared in the perfect world Ethan believed he had built. Ethan stared at Richard, waiting for the older man to smile or admit he was teasing. The smile never came. Instead, Richard simply adjusted his cufflinks and stepped respectfully to one side, allowing Olivia to continue toward the entrance. For a long moment, Ethan remained frozen. His eyes drifted back to the Rolls-Royce. The chauffeur stood quietly beside it, speaking with hotel staff as though he had performed the same duty hundreds of times before. The polished emblem on the hood reflected the morning sunlight, and every detail of the vehicle spoke of permanence rather than luxury rented for a single day. Vanessa hurried across the marble lobby, forcing a bright smile onto her face. "There you are," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Olivia, I'm so glad you actually came." Olivia turned. "Congratulations on your wedding." The words were sincere. That sincerity unsettled Vanessa more than sarcasm ever could. She had expected bitterness. Instead, Olivia looked completely at peace. Vanessa's eyes swept over Olivia's elegant gown, then toward Amelia Brooks and the executives standing nearby. "So," she said with a nervous laugh, "you've made some interesting friends." Amelia answered before Olivia could. "We are honored to know Miss Carter." Vanessa blinked. "Miss Carter." Richard smiled politely. "Yes." Margaret stepped forward before the awkward silence could grow. "I'm sure everyone would like to take their seats. The ceremony is about to begin." Olivia nodded. "Of course." She calmly accepted the usher's directions and walked toward the reserved seating area. Then something unexpected happened. The hotel's general manager rushed across the lobby. "Miss Carter." He stopped in front of Olivia with obvious respect. "I sincerely apologize." Olivia looked surprised. "For what?" "We only just learned you would be attending." "I'm afraid I don't understand." "The presidential guest suite has already been prepared should you wish to use it before the reception. It should have been offered immediately upon your arrival." Olivia smiled warmly. "That's very thoughtful, but it won't be necessary." "It would be our privilege." "Thank you, but I'm quite comfortable." The manager bowed his head slightly. "As you wish." He walked away. The guests stared. Several whispered among themselves. Did the general manager just apologize to her? Who exactly is she? I've never seen him treat anyone like that. Across the room, Ethan's confidence began slipping away. He turned toward one of his business associates. "Do you know those executives with Olivia?" The man nodded. "I recognize several of them." "From where?" "Sterling Global Holdings." Ethan frowned. "I've heard of them." "Heard of them?" The associate looked at him in disbelief. "They're one of the largest private investment groups in the country." Ethan swallowed. "What would they be doing here?" "I have no idea." Neither did anyone else. The ceremony began. Guests rose as the music filled the garden. Vanessa walked proudly down the aisle, convinced the uncomfortable moments inside the hotel had been nothing more than coincidence. She focused on Ethan waiting beneath the floral arch. They exchanged smiles. The officiant welcomed everyone. The vows began. Throughout the ceremony, Ethan found himself glancing repeatedly toward Olivia. She sat quietly near the middle rows. No anger, no tears, no regret, only quiet composure. For reasons he couldn't explain, it made concentrating almost impossible. When the ceremony ended, applause filled the garden. Photographers surrounded the newly married couple. Champagne was served. Laughter returned. Slowly, Ethan convinced himself everything was back under control. The strange arrival meant nothing. The reception ballroom sparkled beneath crystal chandeliers. Guests mingled while a jazz ensemble played softly in the background. Servers carried silver trays through the crowd. Near the center of the room stood several prominent business leaders Ethan hoped would become future clients. He eagerly introduced himself. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming." One of them smiled politely. "Our invitation actually came through another guest." Ethan hesitated. "I'm sorry. We are here because Miss Carter mentioned the reception would be an excellent opportunity to reconnect." Ethan stared. "Miss Carter." The executive nodded. "Olivia." Another executive joined them. "We've worked with her organization for years." Ethan forced a smile. "I didn't realize Olivia was involved in business." The men exchanged puzzled looks. "Involved?" One of them chuckled softly. "That's one way to describe it." Before Ethan could ask another question, applause suddenly echoed through the ballroom. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen." Conversations gradually quieted. "We have a very special guest with us today." Vanessa smiled proudly, assuming another tribute to the bride and groom was about to begin. Instead, the master of ceremonies looked directly toward Olivia. "We would like to acknowledge the presence of Miss Olivia Carter." Hundreds of heads turned simultaneously. The room fell silent. "We are honored to welcome the principal owner of Sterling Global Holdings." The words landed like thunder. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The master of ceremonies continued. "Miss Carter has recently continued the remarkable legacy established by the late Jonathan Sterling. On behalf of everyone here, we extend our deepest condolences for her family's loss and our warmest congratulations on the extraordinary leadership she has already demonstrated." A wave of astonishment swept through the ballroom. Guests stared openly. Some looked from Olivia to Ethan. Others whispered in disbelief. Margaret's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered across the marble floor. Vanessa's face turned pale. What did he just say? Ethan couldn't answer. His ears rang. His breathing became shallow. Principal owner. Sterling Global Holdings. Jonathan Sterling. Every word repeated inside his head. Olivia rose gracefully from her seat. She didn't rush. She didn't smile triumphantly. She simply inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Thank you for your kind words," she said calmly. "My grandfather believed success means very little unless it improves the lives of others. I hope to honor that belief." The applause grew louder. Not polite applause. Genuine admiration. Business leaders stood first. Then other guests followed. Within seconds, nearly the entire ballroom was on its feet. Everyone, except Ethan. He remained motionless. His mind flashed back to the afternoon he had signed the divorce papers. The broken suitcase. The slammed door. Vanessa laughing. His own voice saying, "She'll figure something out." A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He finally understood. Olivia hadn't become wealthy after they divorced. She had already inherited everything. The very day he threw her out. He slowly turned toward Richard, who met his gaze with quiet dignity. Richard spoke softly enough that only Ethan could hear. "Some fortunes can be measured in money." He paused. "The greatest ones are measured by the people we choose not to lose." For the first time since anyone had ever known him, Ethan Harrison found himself completely speechless. And deep inside, he realized the wedding he had believed would celebrate his greatest victory had become the beginning of his greatest downfall. The applause gradually faded, but the silence that followed felt even louder. Ethan stood motionless, unable to take his eyes off Olivia. Only a few months earlier, he had looked at her with contempt as she stood on the sidewalk holding a broken suitcase. Now, an entire ballroom filled with influential leaders was standing in respect for the very woman he had dismissed as worthless. Vanessa forced herself to smile, but the confidence she had worn all morning was gone. "This doesn't change anything," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Margaret stepped closer to Ethan. "Say something." He couldn't. Every memory came rushing back. Olivia working late into the night, helping him prepare business proposals. Olivia skipping vacations so the company could afford new equipment. Olivia encouraging him after every failed contract. He had convinced himself that he had built everything alone. Only now did he realize how much of his success had rested on the quiet strength of the woman standing across the room. As guests gathered around Olivia to offer their condolences and congratulations, Ethan's phone vibrated repeatedly. He ignored it. A second later, it rang again. Then again. Finally, he answered. "This isn't a good time." His chief financial officer sounded frantic. "It has to be." "What is it?" "The bank has suspended our credit facility." Ethan frowned. "What?" "They've requested an immediate restructuring meeting." "That can wait until Monday." "I'm afraid it can't." The CFO lowered his voice. "Our largest investor has withdrawn." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "What are you talking about?" "And there's more." The words came one after another. 3 clients have paused their contracts. 2 senior managers resigned this morning. Our suppliers are refusing additional credit. They're worried we won't be able to pay. Ethan's hand began to tremble. "How did this happen?" "It didn't happen today." The CFO sighed heavily. "We've been warning you for months." The call ended. Before Ethan could gather his thoughts, another notification appeared. His lender had formally requested an emergency meeting. Then another. One of his pending projects had been cancelled. He looked around the ballroom. Nothing had changed. The music continued. Guests laughed. Servers carried trays of champagne. Yet his world had begun collapsing around him. Not because Olivia had done anything. Because the consequences of his own decisions had finally arrived. Across the room, several executives who had planned to discuss future business with Ethan quietly excused themselves. Instead, they joined the growing circle surrounding Olivia. Amelia noticed Ethan watching. She leaned toward Olivia. "He understands now." Olivia nodded softly. "I think he does." Richard approached with a gentle smile. "There are a few chairpersons who would like to meet you." "I'll be there in a moment." As Richard stepped away, Ethan slowly walked toward Olivia. Vanessa reached for his arm. "Where are you going?" "I need to speak with her." "You can't." "I have to." Ignoring her protests, he stopped a respectful distance from Olivia. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan lowered his head. "I owe you an apology." Olivia waited quietly. "I spent months convincing myself that you were the reason my life wasn't moving forward." His voice cracked. "The truth is, you were the one holding everything together." She listened without interrupting. "I treated you terribly." "Yes," Olivia answered honestly. "I don't expect forgiveness." "No. I just..." He looked into her eyes. I wish I could undo what I did. Olivia remained silent for a moment before speaking. When you handed me those divorce papers, I thought my life had ended. She glanced around the ballroom. But losing that marriage forced me to discover who I really was. She smiled gently. For that, I no longer carry anger. Ethan closed his eyes. But that doesn't mean we can go back. He nodded slowly. I know. Behind him, Vanessa finally lost her composure. She stormed across the ballroom. So that's it. Guests turned toward her. You're standing here, apologizing to your ex-wife on our wedding day. She pointed accusingly at Olivia. This is your fault. Olivia met her gaze calmly. No. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You planned this. I accepted an invitation. You wanted to embarrass us. Olivia shook her head. I came because I refused to let fear decide my future. Vanessa looked around the room. No one supported her. Even the guests who had once admired her now watched in uncomfortable silence. Margaret stepped forward, her voice no longer proud. Olivia. She hesitated. I treated you unfairly. Olivia looked at the woman who had once celebrated as she was thrown out of her home. I hope one day you'll treat the next person with more kindness than you showed me. There was no anger in her words. Only truth. Margaret lowered her eyes, unable to respond. Richard approached once more. Our car is ready whenever you are. Olivia smiled. Thank you. Before leaving, she looked back one final time. Not with triumph. Not with revenge. Simply with gratitude for how far she had come. She walked through the ballroom as guests respectfully stepped aside. Outside, the familiar midnight silver Rolls-Royce waited beneath the afternoon sun. The chauffeur opened the rear door. Olivia paused for just a moment and looked up at the clear blue sky. She silently thanked the grandfather she had never truly known. His final gift had not simply been an extraordinary fortune. It had been the chance to rebuild a life she once believed was beyond repair. She entered the Rolls-Royce. The door closed softly. As the car pulled away, Ethan remained standing at the entrance, watching until it disappeared from sight. Only then did he fully understand that the greatest loss of his life had never been a billion-dollar fortune. It had been the loyal, compassionate woman he had failed to value while she was by his side. The wedding reception continued, but the celebration was gone. The music no longer sounded joyful. The laughter had faded. The image Ethan had worked so hard to create had shattered under the weight of his own choices. And somewhere ahead, beyond the city streets and the painful memories she had finally left behind, Olivia's future stretched before her, not defined by wealth, but by wisdom, dignity, and peace. For the first time in a very long time, she smiled without looking back.